Hey guys, this is Rachel Feldman. I'm so happy that you're back at Healthy Hustle Podcast. I am super pumped, as always, to have amazing people like this woman, Cinthia, who is going to jam. She is the SEO master. And she is going to jam on a topic that I know we all want to know about for our health and wellness business. And she specializes working with coaches just like us so that we can get seen, get known, have more visibility. So if Facebook ads have been making you cry or you just don't have the money for it, don't cry. Look at a woman like Cinthia. So that's why she's here today. Cinthia, without further ado, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I got a little like tune and everything. I feel so special. My name is Cinthia Pacheco. I run Digital Bloom IQ, and I help health and wellness businesses grow and heal more of the world with Google, basically with SEO. And I love what I do. I think it's just so important, especially for coaches and therapists. We have trouble sometimes just knowing how to reach more of the world and feel no shame in that and just get out there.
I love, and we're just, guys, we're going to jump in because you know how I roll. I think even I tell people all the time that my biggest fear was to speak in public. So I started creating YouTube videos and kept them unlisted because my whole side of my face would shake. How am I going to work with all these people and do groups and all this stuff that I wanted to, but I was really scared to do, even though I come off as this complete extrovert. But
right.
I'm like, so I did all those YouTube videos, and that I learned very early on that was just had such an amazing relationship with Google, which I feel just runs the world. It's like, and I think one place I would love to start off with is one, you breaking down why this is really important, but two, we can even segue into, what we're all seeing these days, like, IG shut down, there was a blackout, or even I've struggled at times to get a Facebook ad up. I always say you need to have a core backup, a really solid foundation. And I feel that Google is just a home run. So why don't you even tell somebody who's like, wait, did they say AIP? Did they say EFT? No, we said SEO. Can you explain what SEO is?
Sure, yeah. So SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization. And a lot of people throw out that word and they don't know what it means. So when I'm saying SEO and what I'm talking about is basically becoming friends with Google, right? So understanding what Google wants from our websites, and not just Google. So there's different search engines. Google is the biggest one. But basically, understanding what makes a site get to page one, and then what do you do with that? Because your site, and I've had many clients, your site might already be on page one and you might not even know it. So what does that mean, right? And how are you making use of that? Like, how does that impact your business so that you can just share what you know, share your healing power, share your knowledge with more people,
and not feel completely frustrated. So,
right.
I think you really nailed something, because when we're trying to I call it like biohack the system. Like, you want to biohack how you do your social media. You want to know these like tricks. When you said like these, what is Google looking for? I know so many times you can play the guessing game, and I call it shooting darts. Like, I was really fortunate because I'm a great dart shooter, because I have a lot of energy and I'm naturally that kind of person who launches and can rebound. And also it's kind of like enjoy it, which sounds completely psychotic to most people.
No. There's some like adrenaline rush, right?
Right. Like that's my like, oh, I'm going to jump out of a plane. No, I'm going to launch. Even though I would like doing that too. But the guessing game doesn't work, especially these days. I talk about building my business 10 years ago. And we were in a very different time. Now it's so noisy. So even when you were like, what is Google searching for? Being able to have those keywords. So can you even break down like the process that for somebody who it's like, where do I start? If I don't hire you, which guys, I'm probably going to hire this. But if they don't hire you, what is like step one that somebody could take on an action step even right away?
Yeah, so the first thing that anybody could do, well, two things. Set up your Google Analytics, like please. It just takes 2 seconds, like put the code on there. I can later give some articles to how to do that for Squarespace or WordPress. But just Google like WordPress setup, Google Analytics setup for WordPress. Set up your Google Analytics now. You don't need to look at it today. And actually, if you set it up, it will take 24 hours before you see data. But that on its own is such a powerful tool that you will be grateful to have 6 months down the line, 1 year down the line, 2 years down the line. The cool thing about SEO is it's a long-term gain. It's really a marathon and not a sprint. And a lot of people find that frustrating, but I love it because it means the people who stick around are really the people who have something to say. And it's a perfect complement to all your other like fast-paced marketing, like you were talking about Facebook ads, right? So that's the one thing. The other tool that I really recommend to just set up and get up and running is the Search Console. Really easy to set up. If you have a web developer friend, get them to do it for you. But basically that gives you keywords. It gives you keywords, like it literally tells you what keywords to start ranking in, and you don't need to be super nerdy. It just tells you what you're already doing well, and you can just keep doing some of that before you're ready to kind of go all in SEO. So yeah, those are the two like big main things I'd say.
And I think the really neat thing about what you're talking about, and I always say like, okay, so here's our action step, and like, what does that mean in a health and wellness business? And what I mean for anyone who's like, what is shit? Because I say a lot of terms where sometimes we're like, what does that mean? The shooting dart means that I always say with marketing, you're making an assumption. You're making an assumption of what your ideal client wants, is
Right.
Googling, is searching for. And so instead of taking all that time to put a blog out, put the video out, what you're saying is take this tool, guys, do these 2 steps, and you'll know what somebody's searching for on that blog. You can use those keywords. You can even infuse some of those search, the verbiage that was, of course, spit right out, correct?
Right. Yeah, I think intuitively, if we're passionate about what we do, so intuitively, you're probably already resonating with some good keywords. But the point is, what are you going to invest in with your content? Because, like you said, it's really noisy right now, and we can't just pump out random content all the time. We want to be investing and sharing the content we know people are searching the most in. And so it's about being strategic with our passion, right? Because there is a limited amount, right, of time we can do, of things we can do, of time. So the cool thing about the data and looking at the keywords is you don't have to stop being creative. I think a lot of people feel like, oh, I'm going to look at the data and the keywords and I'm going to like, oh, it's going to feel icky and kind of gross. Like I'm going to have to like sound robotic. And it's quite the opposite. You can use that information as just a creativity vehicle to reach more people. And of course, if a keyword doesn't resonate with you, you don't have to use it, even if it's getting lots of searches. So I'm all about kind of combining that creativity and the intuition with data. And that's like the superpower, right? That's where the gold is at.
So let's even talk about the superpower. Let's say, okay, so let's just call her Sarah. Sarah did step number 1. Sarah did step number 2. And now if you were, and we're teaching this like masterclass on understanding SEO for the beginner, and even for myself, because I'm like, I am going to absorb this all. What does Sarah then do next? Is that about getting her website so that it's more visible on the Google ranking? Or are there other things that she can also do on her website with these keywords to help her really understand to help her get more visible in Google searches?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So I'm not going to go into each of these, but there's basically 3 pillars or components of SEO. And a lot of people get really obsessed with keywords, but keywords are one part, and that's fine. So the other part is technical. So when I say technical, I mean like site errors, like, you know, if you have lots of 404 pages. So 404 pages are pages that don't exist on your site. They might have existed before, and you know, we delete pages, we move pages, things are old. So that's going to happen, but it's all about tending to that stuff. So either hire a web developer on a monthly basis, like low cost web developer, to just keep your house clean, right? Keep your digital house clean, guys. And this stuff accumulates over time. So some of you might be, well, what does that have to do with SEO? It has everything to do with SEO, because if you have 1,000 404 errors on your site, Google will dock you points. You could be ranking really well, but if your site looks shady, like if it looks like it's falling apart, Google knows that, it sees that. So it's really important, just have, like, invest in like a low cost web developer, either once a quarter, once every 6 months, once a year even, to just keep your site
Healthy.
somewhat clean, right? Like, it doesn't have to be perfect, and none of our sites are perfect. Like, I have a bunch of errors on my site too, and I'm an expert. But just like tending, you know, like decluttering, just like in the physical space.
Yeah, like doing a little spring cleaning every quarter.
Right, right, exactly.
Little detox for your site.
Right, and getting the support you need, because we're not all nerds, and so that's okay, right? So that's the second pillar. And the third pillar is backlinking and outreach. So this is something rarely people talk about when in the SEO world. And the good news is that you're probably already naturally doing this. So what is backlinking? Backlinking is when another site links back to your site. And so the best analogy I like to use is, if you move into a new neighborhood and no one knows you, and you never leave your house, and you kind of like shut all your windows and doors, people are like, who lives there? I don't know. I don't know who lives there. It sounds like weird. Versus like you go and you take muffins, or you like go and you introduce yourself, and people come to your house, right? So the same thing, Google looks at, how is your site interacting with other sites? So are there links from other sites, like well-known sites, linking back to your site and referring traffic to you? So you're naturally doing this as part of business, because you're naturally building collaborations, you're naturally doing guest posting, you're naturally just like a human being who's part of a network and a community. But the act of doing it intentionally is way more powerful. So when we get on that podcast interview, you make sure that there's a link back to your site. When you get the guest post, try and get a couple links back to your site, not just one in the bio. And then just reaching out to your network and asking them to include your site on a resource page, right? So that's very different than just kind of letting it happen. And that is also another factor, again, that Google looks at, like, how is your site playing in the sandbox of sites? And if you have a backlink from, you know, Mind Body Green, wow, like your site suddenly looks amazing, because that's a really authority site that you're looking back to. So once in a while, you know, even once a year, pitching larger sites, or, you know, higher authority sites, and looking for those opportunities to be featured. Just doing one link a year could completely change your ranking and your traffic.
That's unbelievable, because just in the third pillar, which I don't think I mean, I've seen it, because I'll go in the back and it will say something like, no backlinking,
right?
Or something like that. But everything that you just talked about, I just want to kind of even recap, because for the coach listening, I think one of the biggest things that came up when I was coaching, and even like 7-8 years into coaching, was, I don't need this publicity. I shouldn't sign up for this course to teach me
right.
how. Now, I had done the things in the beginning that people said, Elephant Journal and Huffington, Mind Body Green,
right.
all of that.
Right.
I think, just like many of us, even myself, I'm like, oh my God, wait, I have to go back and update the site. The second thing is also, I think you brought up some really good things. When people say, I don't know how to get seen, I don't know how to get known. And I love that you said some of us do this intuitively. Like some of us just look for opportunities, or we're visible enough because we're loud enough in our conviction with the process that we take to get somebody healthy, with the process that we had to go. So it's really loud, and it comes from really deep, almost like passionate, fired up, a little irritated state, but with, hey, we're going to help the world. But you brought up some really great things about guest posting. You brought up great things about podcasts, because in a world where it's, let's just say, pay to play, it is a pay to play world. Most coaches, most people who are in a 9-to-5, or they're homeschooling their kids, or they're at, and they want to be in this business full time, that's a huge thing. It's, I don't have, and everyone right now, and this is why I'm so jazzed out, I feel like we're geeking out, everyone's feeding the same system. Yep, you get a click funnel or a funnel, you have a Facebook ad, you split test. And this is a completely different approach, and one that is actually more old school, that's finally coming back around, which is, hey, if you really get out there, you write for people, you take that time, all the things that you just mentioned, you won't have to play the game where you feel like you're constantly hustling so hard to rank up. Is that what I'm hearing you?
Totally. And the cool thing about Google is that it's kind of like a snowball. So, you know, I've had clients who've had their site up for a couple years and they never did SEO intentionally. And then they start doing it intentionally now, and suddenly they're getting leads and leads, and they're not doing anything. Like, it's not like social media where it's kind of like a hungry cookie monster. Like, you got to keep feeding it, because otherwise, and that's fine. Like, I don't have anything against social media, and I use social media. Like, I'm an SEO expert. I think all platforms are relevant if it feels good for your business.
If it's working. Because what I had to do was have that moment this year. And it's happened before. But the biggest thing that I hear from coaches all the time is, social media is exhausting. This isn't working for me. Nobody's converting. All the same thing. They're not finding me. And I always say, they don't just land on your site. Your site. It's not just because you have a great, oh, but I spent so much time thinking about the URL that they would land. No, somebody lied to you. Hate to break it to you. And so I always talk about the power of Google. What goes hand in hand with Google? That's why I had to sit there and say, I have to go back to 3 videos a week. I have to go back to building Pinterest, because it just has a great relationship. But I think what you're talking about is it's even more fundamental and important.
Yeah.
Which is, you can really get your site not only more visible, but you can really understand who exactly is coming, what exactly are the very words that you need to use.
Right. Totally. Yeah. And so a little pro tip to add to that, if anybody out there is like, I want more. Okay. So a pro tip, what are we all about online? So we're about helping our ideal person, right? We have our ideal person. But when it comes to marketing and it comes to SEO, we need to create shareable content. So when I say shareable, it's something that someone is going to be like, oh my God, I need to get this to someone else, right? So let's imagine like our ideal client, like if you're a coach, maybe it's like a mom or, you know, someone who's going through something in their life right now. So if they're reading a piece of content on their site that is specifically speaking to this crisis they're going through, the likeliness of them sharing that isn't that high, because it's personal. Maybe they feel shame around, like they don't even understand what's going on. Why would they share it? Maybe they have a girlfriend who's going through the same thing. Sure, they'd share it, but they wouldn't super share it, right? Like they wouldn't put it on their Facebook page. So what does this mean? Cinthia, you're like, okay, you just told me all this stuff about sharing. Who the hell am I sharing to? So what I recommend with content is, don't just create content for your ideal audience. Create content for what I call friend businesses. So let me show you an example. Let's say you're a coach and you're really into breathing, right? You're into breathing techniques. What other businesses aren't direct competition who would love to hear about your methodologies of breathing? So maybe a yoga teacher, maybe a fitness instructor, maybe a nutritionist. So these are all other businesses who are perfect partner businesses, going back to this idea of networking and creating a community. Create content, not all your content, but create some content for these types of businesses to easily share. That doesn't mean you need to like title it with like to all my fitness coaches, but think about like who, like, first of all, you need to brainstorm who are these friend businesses. So with my clients, we do a really in-depth search of like, what are the non-competitive businesses who would refer clients back to me, right? And then what content are they already sharing? What content would they love to share? Like literally ask them. And then, yeah, where are they hanging out and that sort of thing. So then you suddenly have this awesome like breathing technique, video, blog post, step-by-step thing, maybe with an opt-in.
Maybe with a little 3-day something recipe to feed into. I'm already like, oh my God, I can see this whole page. I know what the opt-in is.
So suddenly you're creating a shareable piece of content that your fitness friend, your yoga instructor friend, they're going to share it with their email list that has 10,000 people. Suddenly you have a 10,000 people reach on a new audience that you haven't even tapped into before. So people, again, don't think about this stuff. They're so focused on the ideal client. And of course you need content for that person because you want to connect with them. But if you're going to spend, you know, a month creating a really juicy piece of content, you want to make sure it's shareable. And there are some factors, you know, that people look at when it comes to shareability. But yeah, thinking about that friend, I call them friend businesses, maybe even like shoulder niches are another way to look at it. For me, like as an SEO expert, just to give people another example, I pair up with web developers, with virtual assistants, with you know, Facebook experts actually, because these are all people who do have clients, and these clients would want to work with me.
I think that's such you know what okay, so even before I go on to what I love about that, I have said, I feel like watching this industry for 10 years and watching where it's gone, I feel like we're going back to these old school basics. Because when I first started, it was SEO, let me do your site for SEO. And it was just when sites, you needed to have sites. Because the businesses before that I had, nobody really had a site. You know, you called people or they found you. I don't even think they have telephone books anymore. But I feel like we're going back to some of these core fundamentals that we've really let go of, hoping. And this is where I call it, like, you can believe in BS, Band-Aids, and Barbies. No offense, Barbies, I played with them. And we don't have to get into me cursing, but it's this, oh, this is going to fix it. Just like we think in the health, this one protocol will fix it. This one supplement will do everything. Wrong. It doesn't. I mean, maybe that's worked for you. God bless you. That one supplement has fixed all of your issues. But I would say for the majority of the world, it doesn't. And for the majority of people in business, there isn't this one-stop method that works. And that's what I feel that has been fed for the last 4 years. Here, if you do this, if you, as I said, create this funnel with a down, so and a tripwire, and there's a Facebook ad, it's kind of been like this one-stop shop. And now people are realizing that we need to go back to some of these core fundamentals that have originally been there. It's not to say that you abandon Facebook ads if it's working. It's that you set yourself up for a really healthy business and look at where you want to spend your money. And this to me sounds like an unbelievable place to spend money, especially when we're talking about all the things that you just said. Thinking about if you're a yoga practitioner, reaching out to a functional medicine practitioner who doesn't do what you do and say, you know, can we co-partner on this freebie gift? Would you be able to do a master class and be part of my video series, this is what I'm doing, or can I refer people? And all of a sudden you have a cross-linking guest posting referral, where everything that you just said is kind of happening. Am I getting
And
that?
that's sustainable, right? Like
Yeah.
that, yeah, that's
That's
exactly.
old school. That's like, hey, I love what you do. You know, that's I think.
Isn't that old school though? It's like human connection. Like when did we ever get to a point where it was like, well, I don't want to speak to anybody. I want to like be in a box and run my
I
business.
have a funnel in my DM. I tell people, please guys, I am in a lot of places on social media, but I can't keep up with them all. And I think, especially I love when I get a personal message and they're like, I know you're busy. And I think, pitch is coming on. It's the pitch. And you don't even know me. And you're pitching something I already do. So you really don't know me.
Right.
And
like
I love, please, I don't do that. But what I really mean about, yes, old school is I do feel that we're coming back to this point where we do have to go back to some core basics on how we're structuring our business, how we set it up, not shooting darts. You know, and that's what I always say. You do have to know your ideal client, but there are great ways like these stats, these stats that can really help you, or working with somebody like you so that you're not wasting money down the line.
Yeah. And the cool thing is like Google is very stable. So it's a great complement to social media. So a lot of people feel very reactive with social media. And I get it, you know, it happens to me too in my own business. But the cool thing about Google is over time it snowballs and it gets just more powerful. And if you can direct it in a way that makes sense for where you're going, because there are a lot of people who maybe you're like racking up traffic on a post you wrote 3 years ago on like, I don't know, ellipticals, and you don't even care about that anymore, right? So of course you need to direct it. I'm not going to say like, oh, you don't need to do anything with SEO. I'm saying like it's very intentional because it's a little slower. With some small tweaks over time, it can be very powerful, and it can just be a really nice, stable thing you have going on for you. Because the weather of marketing and the weather of these platforms, like it's going to come and go. And I don't know. That's why I love doing this stuff. It feels just a little more stable and calm, and you know, you can breathe. It's not like, oh, I screwed up tomorrow and tomorrow it's going to be all different. It doesn't work like that in SEO land.
So if somebody is getting, and I swear I get pitched, I can't tell you how many emails. We have analyzed your site and we would love to do SEO for you. If somebody is going to hire you, what makes one person, just like what makes a coach? I know what makes me different as a coach. What makes working with you and the process that you help somebody with different than working with somebody else?
So I'm all
people. We're just trying to get clarity.
Yeah, like I'm all about taking out that overwhelm feeling that a lot of people get when they even think about like the technology behind their site. And I'm just about making, you know, helping you feel more creative, right? So I have a fine arts degree, but I also know how to code, right? So I'm very much like left brain, right brain, and I understand when someone sits down to write a blog post, and it's like, make it SEO friendly, suddenly your fingers feel like they're icicles.
You're like, and I love, and you even said that earlier. I mean, yeah, I was like, there's got it, like, what's her past story? Because that's the thing when I always say to coaches, like, why is somebody going to hire you? It's because somebody genuinely feels your heart. They feel that it's not, people always say to me, I love that you're not salesy. And I always say, I hate salesy. I love making money. I love changing lives. I've always been an entrepreneur. I've never worked for somebody except when I was pregnant with my first child. And I was like, oh, okay, I don't know if I can do the grind of real estate right now. But it's because somebody identifies with you and they know that you're not just going to be like, push them off to somebody else in an agency and get a report spewed back. And I love that what makes you unique in my eyes is that it really is in the health and wellness industry. You're selling an experience and a journey. And
Right.
I think a lot of people forget that, and they don't see that there has to be, whether you want to call it heart-based, whether you want to say, I sell from the soul. At the end of the day, we're selling our experience. And if it doesn't come out in all the areas or the people that we're working with, it just doesn't feel as fluid of an experience.
Yeah, totally. I mean, for me, the SEO landscape is very masculine dominated, right? So as a woman, and I feel very feminine, I tried the approach, the approach I have is very feminine. So I just kind of take away all that techie stuff. Like, I still create awareness and there's transparency, so people know what I'm doing for their site and what my team is doing for their site. But it doesn't feel like, okay, I'm going to talk in robotics and you not need to understand, which a lot of people have that horrible experience with that web developer or that agency.
100%. Or they, not even, let's even take it out of SEO for a second before we wrap up. I hear so many people say horror stories. And I always say, work with people who are going to teach and empower you. That means your website, because if you own a business, to me, it's like owning a restaurant. You need to know how to run the cashier. You need to be, a waitress. You need to know how to clean out the freezer. You need to know all the different things. You need to be a line cook, because at one point, maybe somebody won't be there, or you just want to feel empowered, so that overwhelm lessens, so that you can actually show up.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
look
And
exhausted.
that's a big part of my services too. Like, I train my clients team and I give them enough, like, I'm always going to be the expert and I'm not going to like give you all the information,
I'm not
but
going to give you
if
all my
you,
secret sauce.
well, but would you want to know it
No,
anyway? That's not where
no,
you shine,
no.
right? So I could if you wanted to, but so like, I'm going to work with your VA so that they understand the basics of SEO. I'm going to work with your web developer so they're not like undoing all the work that we just did, right? So I don't want people to be dependent on me. I want like my services to help them grow and to, if anything, become like just independent. So I will do that for clients where I'm just like training their team, and maybe they won't have to hire me for a year or 2 years, and that's fine. Like, I just believe that SEO can become a very organic sort of thing, and then checking in once in a while with an expert is always good. But that's the cool thing. You can start right away and you don't need too much information. With the keywords, you could get started as soon as you got your Google Analytics, your Search Console. You could probably get started tomorrow and start like tweaking a couple things and playing around with some stuff.
And I love, guys, I always say this, make sure that you go back when you're going through this and look at this as like tangible steps, because there were so many things. Just even recap a little. The step 1 and 2, very basic. The pro tip. The other part is you have to show up. And this is going to take really dropping the fear and reaching out to people, guest posting, taking a risk, writing an article, take your zone of genius and reach out to some of the examples that, we spoke about today. You have to do that work. There's not like a magic wand. We all wish there was, but that's why it's amazing when I have people just like you sharing like very tangible tips. So with that being said, tell everyone where they can find you. And of course, guys, it'll be in the show notes just for those of you who are like already doing it, listening.
Yeah, you can totally like pause and re-listen and do it that way. So I'm at digitalbloomiq.com, and then on Instagram as well, digitalbloomiq, and Facebook. And yeah, I have my own podcast as well, Digitally Overwhelmed.
I'm going to have to listen, of course, and binge listen. Guys, this is so huge and important, because I can't tell you, just even listening to this today, you really broke down SEO onto the power of it, what it really means, why it's essential, and also what it can do to really enhance and expand with something like Google that's not leaving.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very
stable. Not going anywhere. If anything, it's stronger. So guys, I just want to thank you. I want to thank you, Cinthia, so much. Please go stalk her stuff. read her blogs, download, listen to her podcast. Because if you're stuck, if you're having trouble either, getting your blog to be seen and known, or you just say, wow, this is a really smart move I should probably do before I go do a $10,000 mastermind that promised me X, Y, and Z. I would say start foundational first. Have
Yeah.
that site so when you do start to up level and you're adding on things, people actually find.
Yeah, people will search your name, right? Like you want to come up in those results.
They're like, wait, who's that person? No, you want to come up. So with that being said, guys, make sure to check out this amazing woman. Thank you so much for being here. And do you want to tell last thing? Do you want to say anything that anyone on the this is my tip that you got to do, like stat?
I just also like sometimes forget about the data. Just like speak from your heart, like what you were saying before. I know that doesn't sound very SEO-y, but I really believe that, like for me even, like just forgetting about the data, forgetting about the keywords, like sometimes just come at it from your heart and everything else will, you'll attract the right people. You don't need to worry about everything.
So guys, just to recap, I would say the combo of both. But I love what
Yeah.
you just said because we can get so overwhelmed. Platform, CRM, technology, where should I be? Show up. I
Yeah.
swear that is one of the biggest things I don't see. If I come to your Facebook page and all you're talking about is dogs, and I love dogs. But if you're
Yeah.
just talking and I don't even know what you do, make
Yeah.
sure that you're setting up a healthy foundation on your website. That is your home, and that you invest. I mean, after this conversation, I'm like, this is a home run, that you invest in getting seen and getting visible in
Yeah.
different ways other than just what we are seeing out there. So, guys, stay tuned for the next one. Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure, and we are going to peace out. Bye, guys.